So I would like to welcome all of you to join me for one of my trinity of scientific talks, the flagship talks that I have, and this is What's the Point? I hope you've watched my talks on unity up until now, and the end will be my theory of everything. Just a moment. Yes, so I'd like to set the stage for the talk, and I'm going to my outline now, so you can choose to look where you wish. But here's my outline. What's the point? Yes, and I have an introduction. I have basically definition terms. I like to use the analogy of Oklahoma. And if you're familiar with Oklahoma, they have a wonderful opening number where it's on a railroad and it's to the beat of a railroad track. But you got to know the territory. There's always that refrain by one. And it's a number salesman on the train. But that defines terms. The next topic is you got trouble, my friends. Yes, you got trouble right here in River City. So you have to create a problem in order to solve it. So this is where I set the stage for your insight. And then stand and deliver. This is where I hope to enlighten you to a new way of thinking about math in general. And then the conclusion of what's the point. So we have a cascading outline. And I'd like to go into the introduction now. And we have all of these topics. I'll go over them quickly. Looks very long. Roles. Yeah, I would like to play a role, and I would like for you to play a role on what the purpose is of this talk. And your role is to play the part of a rich, aspiring world chess champion. You're not the world chess champ yet, but you want to challenge yourself in many different intellectual arenas other than chess, thinking that this will help your game. And because you're rich, you're willing to pay me, the, how do you like this, Ken Sultant, who specialize in tutoring people such as you into challenging their intellects on various topics, this one being related to math. And don't be frightened by math. We're not really going to do much math. It's more theory. But I don't want to belabor the point, so we can, I don't know, should I close those back up? We can go on to the goal of this talk, and I'll try to limit it to 1 hour here, is that in wow, I deliver one epiphany in 1 hour for, let's say, $500, okay? And if you don't have that epiphany at the end, I guess you don't have to pay me. Okay. You're getting this one for free, though. Yeah, so underlined. So I had this underlined. This should be underlined, okay? That just means pay attention here, because this is very important here. Because you're going to come to realize that you're living under a fallacy, you know, a fantasy with math that you haven't realized, and that's where I've underlined to give you hints to pay particularly close attention, okay? I don't think I'll close these up anymore. So, yeah, I'd just like to give some, not slogans, but some expressions for thought here upon entering this session. And one is the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And and this applies to many different areas, but this applies specifically to math, because we've sort of forced ourselves into our own hell. I guess I end up talking to this camera here because I can't see this camera here on the screen. So yeah, that's a expression that I use quite often and that I like. The other is our success plants the seeds of our own destruction. I don't know if that's an exact quote from somewhere, but it's not an original thought of mine. And it relates to really world population, that humans have been so successful for so long and have known no end to resource fulfillment, that unless they come very quickly to the realization of their reality, that they're going to inherit their success, is going to be the seeds of their downfall. And I call them they, because I have removed myself from that group. But I don't want to go on that soapbox because I want to get on to math here. So, and the one I like comes from Dante's Inferno. Upon entering purgatory, a sign over the, I think it's a cave, entrance is, abandon all hope, ye that enter here. I mean, we're going down this path, there's no, you end up, everybody ends up in the same place. You can maybe take different paths, but your destination's going to be the same. So, having said that, get on to the body of the talk. And what I want to say there, you're going to follow along with me, but whenever you become surprised by something, that's where you should pay particular attention, especially around the underlines. Because that's when an epiphany occurs. Because it's when you're surprised by something that means, almost by definition, that it's inconsistent with the way you are thinking about what it is you're surprised about. And then the summary is, do I have anything there? Yes. Oh yeah, I love this one. And this isn't an exact quote. I think I might have shortened it, but I love it. And this is in the thought of number theory, because numbers come from us. And this is the expression. It says God created integers, which are whole numbers, in nature, and placed them in nature. All other types of numbers only exist in the minds of men. So other than positive integers, you can have 3 lambs, you can't have 3.5 lambs. So that's something to think about when we run into some of these situations that we're going to run into. So I think I can just close this to then continue into this is, you got to know the territory. Okay, I love that number. What do you talk? What do you talk? What do you talk? You got to know the territory. Okay, yeah. Now, there are, I wish I didn't have to show them all at once. But that's the way this works. I'm going to go over this fairly quick, because hopefully you're familiar with most of these. We just have to establish this common ground, because we can't build from it. An integer is, I used it before, it's just a whole number. It's the simplest thing. 1, 2, 3, 7 people. You can't have 7.5 people, so people only come in integers. And then I just had some common ways of notation that leading zeros are typically suppressed. They're meaningless. And then if there's no value at all, then it's usually just given a 0. And sometimes it's 0 decimal, but the decimal is implied. And that's what an integer is, as opposed to what I'll call the decimal. So an integer is on the left of the decimal. And the decimal, a decimal point. And to the right of the decimal point is the decimal number, and that's typically represented here as if it's 0, either all blank, even with no decimal, or a decimal 0, or decimal nothing, and then trailing zeros are always suppressed. And a number that's I think it's a real number. It can have values on either side of the decimal point, and it can be positive or negative. So that's the summary of energy. I guess I'll close these up. Yeah. Now this next point is I should have probably there's no expansion. Maybe I should have underlined this, but yeah, a mathematical point, or it's also called a Cartesian point. A Cartesian comes from Descartes. Cart meaning Cartesian, from Descartes. It indicates a location without any real estate. That is a mathematical, I'll call it a mathematical point. It has no dimension to it. You can't measure its width or its height because it has none. So it's really just a location on let's say a line, a ruler. And you really couldn't draw a point because that would be too wide by definition. Yeah. So then the number line is just a continuous linear string of mathematical points. A linear meaning they're in one dimension. Without where there is never a location on the line without a point. So every possible location on the line has a point. Okay, and that whole line is called the line number, and it does have a positive and negative aspect. The center being 0. I'm sure that you're familiar with that. Okay, I didn't have an expansion there. No. Okay, so now, Cartesian space, going back to this concept of a Cartesian point or a mathematical point, and combining that with the number line, and taking 3 number lines and the 3 cardinal axes of 3-dimensional space, then gives you the ability, by simply measuring out on each of those 3 lines where something is, then you're able, just by those 3 numbers, to give a location of anything in space. So that's the concept. Any location in space can be described by 3 numbers. So that's space, okay, and our Cartesian space. And here, numerical notation. Now, here's the first underline. So, and this really would seem insignificant. So, if I weren't to have underlined this, it is almost not worth saying. It's so axiomatic. I mean, so fundamental, so unchallenged that it's like, duh. I mean, why do you have to say it? But it has to do with numerical notation. Maybe before we go over that, let's just say, you can represent a number many different ways. The way we do it is Arabic notation. There is also Roman, Roman binary for nerds like us. Hexadecimal for the more of the IBM, maybe mainframe kind of nerd guy. I was more octal guy than hexadecimal myself. And scientific notation has to do with numbers that have very extreme values of small or large for rocket scientists, and written. You can say, as you do on a check, for $172.02. So, but the obvious thing in all of these examples is that regardless of the form in which I express the value of the number is the same. So I could say the same thing many different ways, but it would all translate. You can take many different paths, but all those doors are going to end up leading to the same value. Okay, so just remember that, because when you maybe start to give me some resistance on this enlightenment that I hope to belay upon you, you won't resist, at least for long. And infinity, everybody has, I think, thought about infinity. It simply means unbounded, okay? And just to maybe go over the types, something can be infinitely large in, space, or it can be infinitely small in space. Or time also is unbounded. In its future and its past, and at least in our what's the word? Not proverbial, provincial thinking about time. And space, as I mentioned, it's really large or small. It seems like you can go either way, but there, with quantum physics, seems like there's a sort of a granularity when you get down really small. And, of course, just numbers, which represent all of these. So all of these things are just really representations of counting of numbers. So this is where our infinity is going to come in here. So we just, I think we're familiar with infinity there. I'll close that up, okay. And the term rational, reasonable, that doesn't need any further definition, but I'm going to use the term irrational coming up, which means unreasonable, illogical, okay? And an epiphany is a sudden insight, and the best example I like is of Wile E. Coyote, the Roadrunner cartoon, where he's trying to figure out how to get the Roadrunner, and all of a sudden light bulb goes off on his head, and then the next panel you see is shipping, Acme Shipping Company comes up with some new kind of deal. So that's hopefully when you have your epiphany, which I am guaranteeing here, you'll have a sudden exuberation of feeling with this new thought pattern emerging in your brain. And paradigm shift. That one I almost forgot to put in here. A paradigm shift is a change in the way you think. I think I have examples here. No, I didn't. Okay, but an example would be, I think I have an example down here. A wave-particle duality. You have to change the way you think, when you get into quantum physics, okay? And continuous discrete, and I just define that as analog or digital. That really relates to the talk that I gave on unity and duality. So I won't go into that further, but it just means that whenever you take the whole of anything and break it down into its components, you go into a dualistic state from a state of unity, and something is lost in doing that. So enough said on that. And a dilemma is when you have a problem that has no acceptable solutions. That is, every solution you have has some kind of disadvantage associated with it, and maybe it's really hard to choose, which one. So this is the case of you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Quite often politicians are, faced and put into this position as, they're going to win some, they're going to lose some, and it's inevitable. And the other would be, you choose the lesser of two evils. So you take the best alternative that you have, which maybe isn't even acceptable, but you have to deal with reality. And a puzzle is a unsolved problem. Okay? I also have the term here, an enigma. A black box, an unknown. And a puzzle can be of two types. It can be solvable, but you don't have the solution. So that's why it's still a puzzle. Okay? Otherwise it wouldn't be a puzzle anymore. Or it might be an unsolvable puzzle. but you just don't know it's unsolvable. So and you don't know enough to know which kind it is. In fact, I worked in high school on a problem I now believe was ultimately unsolvable. I wasted my time for a long time. Okay, and a conundrum. Yeah, a conundrum is, I guess I spelled that wrong. It's a contradiction. Or it's an oxymoron. Okay. An example would be a timeless state. If something is timeless, something is in a state, it can only be in a state in time or across time. So a timeless state is like a jumbo shrimp. Okay. Another example would be, can God make a stone so heavy that he can't lift it? I mean, it's a case of contradiction in terms. Oh, and here's where I have the wave particle duality. Something can't be everywhere at once, but it seems that light, and electrons work this way, and often a conundrum to solve it often requires a paradigm shift, a shift in the way you think about whatever reality you're thinking about. And so we can continue with that. And my last term here is a paradox. And one of my favorite questions is, what's the difference between a dilemma and a paradox? Well, a dilemma now and a paradox is when you have contradictory true statements. When you have two or more statements which you believe to be true, but they contradict each other. An example would be, let's say, you, through some logic, conclude that John is 25 years old. Okay, and with that same logic, you then conclude that John's father is 20 years old. Okay, now that being impossible, when you reach a paradox, it's usually something is wrong upstream. It's polluting the water upstream. Okay, you've made some. You've overextended yourself, and you need to look back at your earlier assumptions. So, having made that point, I think we've defined all the terms, and we need to proceed post haste. Here is I need to create the problem here, and the problem that we have is a dilemma. Okay. No, this isn't the problem. This is just a warm-up. Okay, this is just sort of an explanation of the way things is. This is the road to hell. Okay, the dilemma that we have is if the Cartesian or mathematical point had any length, width, or height, it would be worthless. Even if we're so teensy small that it, would be down at the quantum level still. You can enlarge that, and whenever you end up looking at the point, it's going to have some dimension to it. And whenever it has a dimension, you can say, well, is the point here, 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 or here? And like this is the north end of the point, and this is the south. I mean, what is this? I mean, we need to break it down further. So until you get to a point that has the infinite or no dimension, it's worthless. So we're forced to deal with this concept of Cartesian point. And having said that, now we have to deal with the, you don't think of things as good or bad. Just think of them. You have to deal with their consequences or their karma. So the consequences of thinking in terms of math, in terms of this is. And here, thinking now in terms of, I should digress here a moment because I don't think I explained it well. So if we just take the distance on the number line between 0 and 1, we can cut that in half and cut that in half. We can infinitely go down and expand forever and ever into smaller and smaller pieces, or we could take the ruler and stretch it out to infinity at either end. So we go for infinitely long or infinitely small, okay? So, and because the point has no dimension, we can go on forever, okay? So it's infinite in both directions. So here, now I'm getting into this topic of irrational numbers, of which pi, which I hope everyone is familiar with, I should have put that in on the terms, is an irrational number. And I had a real hard time, and this is why I probably picked this topic, because I had such a hard time finally understanding what was going on here. So you have this pi, 3.146, whatever, for infinity. Never repeats, and never goes to 0. And then you have this infinite number line. So what's the problem? I mean, why is it irrational? Why can't, you just go on forever, on the number line and on pi, and so what? So, and then I was also bothered by the idea that 0.99999 or any repeating, 0.3333 or 666, they aren't irrational. But to me, it's the same thing. It's just they don't. So I was really puzzled here for a long time, and this is the part of the insight I'm going to provide. But this insight is more common. So, but I think I have an expansion here. No, I don't. Okay. So, yeah. So here is, and this is the same thing as this 0.9999 here. If we take an infinite series, that is a series of numbers that we're adding, that goes on ad infinitum, and if the series of numbers starts at and let's just take $1, it's easy to think about, and first you take a half of it, so you take 50 cents, and then you take a quarter of it, and that's and then you end up just conceptualizing that. If you think about that just for a moment, you're never going to end up taking the whole thing, because you're always just taking 1/2 of what's left. Okay, so if you half something forever, you're never going to have all of it. And that's why you always hear in math so often it approaches 0, or approaches infinity. I mean, it can go on. It has to do with like Zeno's paradox with the tortoise and the hare, but we don't need to go here. But what I wanted to show you here was here's a mathematical proof that shows here that 0.999 in fact does not equal 0.999 to infinity. It equals 1. And it doesn't equal almost 1. It equals 1. Exactly 1. So if we take the value of 0.9999 to infinity, and we just equate it to x, because let's say we don't know what that value is, okay? And then just using simple algebra, we can multiply both sides by 10. So that simply moves the decimal here, as you can see here. So it's a 9.999. And it equals 10x, okay? And then if we subtract, I meant to show a subtraction here, where if we subtract 9x from 10x, we end up with x equals 1. So what we've done, we've erased this infinite series here after it and made it equal to an integer, and then equal to 1. So that's just a very convenient way, and that is very bothersome, because if you keep on taking half of something, it says when you go to infinity, it goes away. So I mean, at what point does it go away? You know, how long does a number have to get? So, yeah, that was a very bothersome. So, I started reading about infinity. And George Cantor here, one of my favorite guys, along with Boltzmann. All the guys that go crazy and commit suicide are sort of my kind of guys, because they're so heavily into their science that, and they're so innovative that. And Cantor had not a competitor, but you know, I guess a co-worker who was, I guess, very adversarial deal. He went loony bin. But anyway, and I have this underlined here, so we better take a good look at it. Cantor is diagonalization proof, and I won't go into this in great detail because it took me a long time to understand this. So I can hopefully explain it to you in simpler terms. What Cantor did, he proved that the set of rational numbers, i.e. the numbers that are on the number line, is smaller than the infinite set of irrational numbers. So, saying that another way is there can be infinities that are not equal in size, that some infinities can be larger than others, okay? And so the infinity of rational numbers is smaller than the infinity of irrational numbers. And to just go off into that diagonalization proof is, if you conceive of taking, and we'll just take a list of rational numbers, and we're just going to list them. So that means we're going to have rows. You know, row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to infinity. And then each row is going to have a number of columns for as long as the number is. So we're going to have an infinite number of rows and columns. And what he does is he simply goes down diagonally. It goes, you know, row 1, column 1, row 2, column 2. It goes down this diagonal. And he simply creates a new number. And he ensures that it doesn't equal any number that's on this list. And so thereby doing that, and so it means that one infinity can outrun another because it's bigger. So the long and short of that, it might not be obvious, but this is really ruinated. This is why Pythagoras, under the threat of death, and I think the guy that divulged it got killed ultimately of irrational numbers, because this really ruinated, you know, the purity of numbers he was thinking. So it really translates to this next topic, which is also underlined. Okay, you got to look at this. That the number line is not continuous. You might remember back there earlier, I said that the number line never has a location on it that doesn't have a point. But that's not true, because you have these irrational numbers that are apparently, you can't get, no matter how long you go down there deeper and deeper, you can never get to them. They tend to be able to outrun you. So, holy shit, this is a big deal. So, where's the Epiphany here? Okay, oops. Okay, so I got a time to stand and deliver. And this talk actually used to be combined with the talk that I had on time and Zeno's arrow, but I've already did that on the talk on unity. So this simplified it, but it goes back to the same concept of dealing with infinity. So here now it's time for me to stand up and deliver. So here, let me just set the stage here. So we have, and let's just take the number line from 0 to 1. Make it very simple. Forget about negative numbers. Forget about numbers bigger than 1. So it's just going to be a decimal number between decimal 0 for infinity to, to 1 decimal 0. Okay. So if you pick any number at random, so if you just put them all in a big bin, all these numbers, let's say all of them, rational and irrational, put them all in there, okay? And you dig in that bin, and you pull out a number, okay? This is like for the draft or for the lottery, okay? You say, here's a number. And you say, okay, what is the likelihood that that number you pick will be an irrational number? So we have all these rational and irrational numbers in there. And you pick one at random, and what's the percentage would you give it to? Like 50-50 or 60-40? Hard to get your mind around that. But here's where the surprise is going to come in. So here's the epiphany I hope to deliver to you. And that is that, this is already opened up. I don't think this should be open. It's 100%. It's 100% sure. 100%. Not 0.999. 100%. So you have all these rational numbers in there. And you could pick for infinity and you're never going to get one. Huh? Because 100% on every choice. What is going on here? Okay. So here's where we get to the insight. Here, okay, that's good. There, we'll write it. 40 minutes, okay. Ta-da! We'll put it up here. Okay. So remember I talked about numerical notation. Okay. So normally we suppress the leading zeros and we suppress the trailing zeros, okay? But now we must think of a true number, in its true form, okay? And since we were just dealing with from 0 to 1, really we can forget about all the numbers, to the left of the decimal integers, because everything's going to be less than 1, okay? We'll exclude 1. Okay, so we just have to the right, and normally, we represent a number, and once the number goes to 0 and just continues to be 0, we chop off all the zeros. But now here's the insight here, and here's what to think about, and here's where you're going to maybe buck the thinking, but think about this. Let's say we're picking this irrational number. I'm going to spend a little time here to make sure you get it. Let's say we're picking this number out of this bucket, okay, of all these rational and irrational numbers. So now let's say we're picking the number, but now let's say we're picking instead of it being a chip in there, we're picking each digit. Okay, the bucket only has from 0 to 9, okay, so we're picking, well, here we're picking this digit is this one, or this digit is this one, okay, so, but the true number has an infinite number of digits, so what you're saying, and let's just say, for instance, let's say you thought you picked a number that had 75 digits, to the right of the decimal, okay. Well, what you're saying there from, what did I say, 75, yeah. So what you're saying then is for 76, when you drew that digit, it was 0. And when you drew 77, that was 0. And when you drew 78, that was 0. And when you drew 79. So you're saying that you picked a number that had, significant non-zero digits. Well, a mix of zeros, non-zeros. But then magically, at the 75th digit, it just automatically started going to zeros and stayed at zeros forever and ever. So that's why it's 100% certain that you're not going to pick a rational number when you pick a number out of that bucket. So there's the epiphany that I hope to deliver, and I hope that makes you a better chess player for it. And I hope I earn my 500 buckaroos, okay? This isn't my secret. I didn't invent this, okay? I'm just explaining it to you here, okay? Yeah. So here, to make this point again, irrational numbers really do not take up any space, zero space, on the number line. I mean, that sounds astonishing. But when you think about it, it's really not. It's really based upon this self-imposed, dilemma that we were in, having to pick a Cartesian point that had no dimensions. Because you think about it, you can take a thimbleful of Cartesian points, okay, and pour them in this, on the number line. Or you can take a dump truck full of Cartesian points. You can take 100 dump trucks. You can take 1,000. You can take an infinite number of dump trucks. And they take up no friggin' space. Well, duh. I mean, you're not doing anything, so you're just dumping. So, how should you think about this? How should you think? So, hopefully, I think I can just close that whole thing down there, yeah. So I stood and delivered. So the conclusion here, and we're going right at 45 minutes, so that'll be good, is it's not, it's between the points. It's just, yeah, so space happens between the points. Just as motion, and hopefully here you've watched my unity talk on the arrow, that motion doesn't happen, with the dilemma between at any point in time the arrow isn't moving, then at all points in time the arrow isn't moving, so the arrow isn't moving. What's going on there? Well, the arrow doesn't move. The arrow only moves in time. You have to have a number of points, okay, before you see movement. At any one time it's not moving, but it moves across. So it's in between the points that it moves, these invisible points. And it's the same thing with space, which is what we've just talked about with rational and irrational numbers. It's not the points, it's in between the points, okay? So it's between the large and the infinitely large. I mean, that's where, the difficulty that we have come to, and I'll just let you think on this because I'm running close to my time, and let's see, do I have anything here? Yes. And what's between these points is unity. If you don't break things up, you have unity, okay? And the points are artificial anyway. So if you don't if you stay in continuous, you don't get into this discontinuity that you get when you go from unity to dualism. So it's the same point that I made on unity here, that it's between the points. And to end this talk, I just wanted to sort of name my more favorite sources on this topic, and I think the biggest influence was the teaching company on the series they had from zero to infinity. The study of number was excellent, and this book, and actually get it on Books on Tape. It's very good. Zero, the biography of a dangerous idea. It goes beyond what we've talked about, but it includes what we talked about here. And Zeno, which I really covered more in my unity talk on his paradoxes of the tortoise and the hare and the arrow. And Rene Descartes, who I didn't mention much, but he's one of my favorite philosophers that came up with the idea of Cartesian space. And George Cantor, I think it's pronounced George, on his thoughts on infinity. It's really was enlightening. And to end here with my guru, Bob Tenzing Thurman, on his talk on the between. It's available on CD of one of his Minla talks on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the between being the bardo between life and death and life. So it's going to take me a while here to close up.